I step off the rattling Soviet-era bus at 7:30 in the morning, my leather satchel thumping against my knee like a dying heart, and the first thing that greets me is the smell of Kõrgem Kunstikool Pallas, a smell like wet plaster left to rot inside a locked wardrobe since 1989. I breathe it in and already my lungs feel older, heavier, as though the building itself is trying to fold me into its mildewed biography. I tell myself this is higher education, this is culture, this is the yellow brick road to becoming a capital A artist, but the bricks are crumbling and the yellow is nicotine. I am 19, I am soft, I am the daughter of people who still queue for bread in their dreams, and I have been promised a palace of ideas. What I meet instead is a hallway so narrow that my coat sleeve scrapes both walls, and the physics of that squeeze whisper to my body. You do not belong here, you are taking up too much oxygen, shrink. At the reception desk, a woman with the complexion of cold porridge slides a form toward me without lifting her eyes. I say good morning in 3 languages because I am eager, I am international, I am the future. And she answers by sighing through her nose so hard that a tiny bubble of spit inflates and pops at the corner of her mouth. This is the first lesson Kõrgem Kunstikool Pallas teaches. Curiosity will be handled like an infectious rash. I sign my name where she jabs with a chewed biro, and I feel the paper dampen under my palm. And I know the damp is not water, it is the slow sweat of bureaucracy, the kind that never evaporates, only migrates from palm to palm until every student carries the same gray fingerprint. I want to ask where the international office is, but the bubble has already re-inflated, and I am afraid it will burst onto my face. So I retreat, clutching the form like a treaty that already promises betrayal. They give me a studio space in the attic, a room shaped like a coffin stood on end. The ceiling slants so low that when I stretch my spine, I am bowing to the rafters, a ritual of submission performed 5 times a day. There is one window, the size of a postage stamp, and the glass is so old that the world outside ripples like a memory you cannot trust. The radiators clank but produce no heat, they only cough up the smell of burnt dust and regret. I place my hand on the metal and count to 10, the way my grandmother taught me to test a fever, and the radiator burns my palm in exactly the way a neglectful father burns your trust. Not enough to blister, just enough to remind you that warmth is conditional. This is bad because art needs muscle, it needs blood to circulate, it needs the student to forget the existence of her own kneecaps, but my kneecaps are chattering. When paint stiffens on the palette, because the room is 8 degrees Celsius, the pigment grains separate like shy children at a village dance, and the brush drags across canvas the way a lie drags across conscience, leaving skid marks that will never fully lift. I try to tell the technician, a man whose vocabulary is limited to the word tomorrow, and he shrugs so deeply that his entire torso folds like a deck chair, and the shrug says, "Your discomfort is a mandatory textbook. Please purchase it annually." The equipment list they emailed me back in July promised easels that adjust, lights that mimic the sun, and a printing press older than the nation, but lovingly maintained. What I find is an easel with one leg shorter than the others, so every time I apply pressure the canvas wobbles like a drunk uncle at a wedding. The overhead bulb flickers at the frequency of anxiety, 24 Hz. Scientists say that is the same rhythm that triggers seizures in laboratory mice, and I am a laboratory mouse with student debt. The printing press stands in the corner like a beheaded dinosaur, its rollers cracked so deeply that when I run my finger along the groove, I collect a splinter shaped like Estonia. I ask for
repair. They tell me the budget for repairs was spent on a motivational poster.
In the shadow of the esteemed Kõrgem Kunstikool Pallas, the businesses that dot the landscape seem to be caught in a perpetual twilight of discontent. As we tread through the reviews, a mosaic of experiences forms a picture that is, at times, as unsettling as it is enlightening. Let us first cast our gaze upon the TASKU Center, a hub that promises the vibrancy of commerce yet seems to falter in the most basic of human needs, dignity and cleanliness. Here, the restrooms are not just a pit stop but a battleground where one's wallet and patience are put to the test. Toilets, it appears, are a privilege rather than a necessity, with gates that mock the urgency of nature's call. But let us not linger too long in these stalls of sorrow, for the tale grows grimmer with security personnel who seem to have forgotten the art of diplomacy, their heavy-handedness leaving much to be desired in professional courtesy. As we wander further into this labyrinth of consumer woes, we stumble upon the Asian Chef, a dining establishment that is, quite frankly, a culinary conundrum. The promise of exotic flavors is often marred by the rudeness of staff, who, in their defense, may simply be mirroring the coldness of the fare they serve. For here, rice sits preserved as if in anticipation of an apocalypse, and chicken, in its raw and unapologetic state, dares the bravest of gourmands to question its edibility. Our journey takes a turn towards rest and rejuvenation at the V Spa Hotel and Conference Center. Alas, the serenity one seeks in a spa is replaced by the cacophony of a shopping center, where the only thing being stripped away is the guest's peace of mind. The spa, it seems, is less a sanctuary and more a playground for the exuberant youth, leaving one to ponder the true meaning of spa in this establishment's vocabulary. And then there is Ria for in Tardu, a solitary figure in our narrative, standing apart with its single, somewhat forgiving critique. It is a reminder that in every tale of woe, there is a glimmer of hope, a silver lining in the cloud of disappointment that hangs over this commercial landscape. In the end, what are we to make of these businesses that cluster around Kõrgem Kunstikool Palace like moths to a flame? One cannot help but approach them with a sense of trepidation, as if stepping into a carnival funhouse where the distorted reflections are not of ourselves, but of service gone awry. For the traveler, let this be a guide, a lantern in the fog of consumer uncertainty. Seek out the gems that undoubtedly exist amidst the rough and approach the rest with a sense of humor and a pocket full of patience. Remember, behind every negative review is a story, a human experience that has missed the mark. It is my sincere hope that the businesses near Kõrgem Kunstikool Palace will rise to the occasion, transforming the landscape into one that inspires pride and satisfaction among all who visit.
I'm looking into crimes near Kõrgem Kunstikool Palace because I want to understand what can happen to tourists who stay for a short visit. You know, the area around the school has many small shops and cafes, and the businesses near Kõrgem Kunstikool Palace are often family-owned and rely on walk-in customers. They sometimes use aggressive sales tactics. One example is a souvenir shop that claimed to sell authentic traditional crafts at a discount, but changed the price at the register. The shop near Kõrgem Kunstikool Palace is like a place where visitors are shown a beautiful embroidered shirt for €30, and then the cashier switches the barcode and charges €90. The victim probably felt confused and embarrassed after leaving the shop. They likely tried to contact the manager, but received no reply. They probably returned home with less money and a feeling of being cheated. The shop owner may have been reported to the local consumer authority and could face a fine or closure if the continues. Another story involves a small electronics kiosk near Kõrgem Kunstikool Palace, where a clerk offered to help with a card payment and asked the tourist to hand over the card. They then entered a higher amount and kept the extra cash. The victim probably noticed the discrepancy when checking the receipt and might have called their bank to dispute the charge. They likely felt anxious and insecure about their finances. The clerk could be arrested after the police review the surveillance footage, and the shop could be temporarily shut down. While an investigation proceeds, a third incident happened at a market stall close to Kõrgem Kunstikool Palace that sold fresh fruit, but gave a bag that contained a different, lower quality fruit. After payment, the buyer probably discovered the covered they